everyone, and welcome to getting into, drumroll please, Boundary. I didn't put the drum set up. All right. Well, hi everyone. We're kicking off getting into Boundary. If you haven't joined us for these series before, we are live. We are here to answer your questions, do your comments. Is that your cat?
It is my cat.
Get interrupted by our cats,
or
only Cole's cats, because I don't have cats. Interrupted cats. We're here to take your suggestions in the chat to introduce chaotic experiments live. Anyway, if you have not joined our streams before, welcome. I'm Rosemary. This is Cole. We do this series as a way to learn one of the HashiCorp products, and we want you to learn with us. So as you participate, please drop your comments, questions in the chat. Please be welcoming, professional, and courteous as you do so. We want everyone to participate, and so be professional when you're in the chat. More importantly, we are streaming across multiple platforms. We see some of the comments that come in across LinkedIn, Twitch, and YouTube, but we might not be able to see the LinkedIn ones sometimes. Sometimes the comments just don't show up on our platform. So if we ignore them, it's not that we're ignoring them, it's just we just don't see them. After the fact, we will go and respond to them. With that, I guess, Cole, is there anything I'm missing with that intro?
Sometimes we are just ignoring them.
Yeah, sometimes we are just ignoring them. I don't know. Hi, everyone. We already had people lined up in the chat, so very exciting. Hello. Thanks for folks joining us. As a preface to the Boundary, to getting into Boundary in general, we have other ones for Vault and Console, so if you are interested in those, check out our playlist for getting into Vault, getting into Console. We run on and for this one, we're going to run on a every other week schedule. Partially because Cole and I schedule. So we're going to try to run every other week. I'm going to pop up an overlay so you will not see our faces. I'm sorry. But this is our tentative schedule. The next couple of weeks, we're going to do controllers for Boundary. We're going to do workers in September, hosts and targets September 26th. And then we're going to be in a hiatus in October for HashiCorp. So we're going to resume the stream in November. And I think that we're going to be about 10 parts for this. Maybe 11, we'll see. And another thing that's different, if you haven't tuned in to some of our previous Getting Into series, we are going to try to keep these at 1 hour. We heard your feedback. You could close. So happy about it, Cole. Cole and I used to do 2 hours, and we heard from folks that when you watch after the fact, you kind of wanted to speed run through the 2 hour stream. So we are going to try to condense some of these to 1 hour while still keeping the configurations live. So if we cut off all experimentation at 1 hour, don't be offended. We will try to pick it up at the next one. But, we are just trying to condense the episode a bit more.
Yes, Blurn. The pressure is on.
Yeah.
Just we'll see if we'll see.
I don't know. I told Cole I don't think it's possible.
We're gonna do it. We're gonna find a way. Even if we just get cut in the middle of it, we'll be gone.
I don't know how it's going to be. We're gonna see how it goes. Anything else that I missed in terms of logistics? I feel like I was like,
no, I think that's. Okay. I guess we will. Anything that we do here, we are going to minus this stream because this one's mainly going to be concepts, but we will have a reference code base for everyone for every single one of the episodes. You'll be able to check out and redeploy our project and use it for your own purposes.
Yep, and the series goes in order. So the intention is that if you might need to watch the previous episode in order to understand context for the next episode. So if you want to watch the series, go to hash.co/gettingintoboundaries. This will be episode 1. Cool. Why did we decide to switch up this episode a little bit? Because usually what we do is we jump right into implementing something and getting it all done. We decided not to do it for this episode as a getting started.
It's when we do that, I feel like we would take for granted our sort of own internal understanding of the concept, the higher level picture of what it is that we're doing. And while that can, of course, work for some folks, in terms of just feeling your way through something and getting it, and of course, assuming that maybe you've gone and researched it yourself, We wanted for this first episode to really give a good, strong, high-level, fundamental overview of what Boundary is, what its use cases are, its architecture, so we know exactly where we're headed. What is that end destination? That way, we can kind of know up front, and as we're moving and we get down into the front lines and the nitty-gritty details, we can always kind of come back up and say, okay, but remember in the very first stream, this is where we were headed. This is what we were doing. So,
yep. And I think that the next stream we will get more hands-on, but for this one, especially because Boundary, I don't know about you, Cole, but a lot of people who hear about Boundary don't know what it is. And it's not quite the same as like Console or Vault, where there's a sort of a history established Console and Vault. Boundary is one of the newer products that we have. I would say we released it 2020, 2021, something like that.
We should know that, shouldn't we?
I don't remember. I'll remember. We'll go back to the archives.
Yeah.
So Boundary is relatively newer, I would say. And there aren't too many people who really knew about it. So we just decided it was between this, Nomad, and Terraform. We all agreed that kind of Terraform had a lot of getting started material. Nomad, I think we're going to do, but we need to find someone who can teach me Nomad, the ins and outs of Nomad. And then Boundary was sort of like the biggest next requested one. So, we're going to tackle Boundary. Cole, how much do you know about Boundary?
Yeah, well, of course, the more important question is how much does our audience know? And as we've both deduced, probably not as much. I've obviously worked with it in turn context for demos and things like that, but there are a lot of internals that I'm looking forward to sort of sorting out, figuring out. And obviously, I've been using the HashiCorp Cloud Platform generally when I go to stand it up as opposed to standing it up custom. So we're going to get to see how this goes like from scratch. But Rosemary, what is your general, because obviously at conferences, I give like little pitches, but what is your general, in a nutshell, elevator pitch as to what Boundary is to the random conference goer?
Yeah. So if someone's coming up to me and being like, Rosemary, what's Boundary? Boundary helps you with human to machine endpoint access, right? A machine is very abstract. It could be machines, it could be services, basically any TCP endpoint you want. Now, this doesn't matter if you're kind of like a developer who pushes something and is like, hosting a site, a front end site for yourself, right? But in a very large company, sort of the problem that I had, especially when I was working in larger companies, was like as an admin for a bunch of servers, I had to remember which SSH keys had to go where, or if I didn't install something correctly with my identity system, with my whole identity access management system, which was proprietary, by the way, I had to remember how to do these login sequences to each of these endpoints. They were all on different VLANs or different networks, so I never knew like which one I was supposed to connect to. I had 100 different jump boxes to figure out where I was supposed to go to. And then when I moved into dev as a developer, what I had problems with was like someone would tell me, oh, here's a dev endpoint. And I'd be like, how do I get to this dev endpoint? It's not routable to me. And I don't have any way to authenticate to it. It's not integrated with our identity provider, our enterprise identity provider. So like, how do I get to it, right? All of these questions are about access. How do I, as a human who needs to do something in the system, get access to any of these things? And it turns out it's a broader problem across a distributed system that's not that easy to answer. And so Boundary is a way for you to control and manage human access to any of these endpoints that you might have. You can group them, logically group them, provide access to different groups of people. You can control how long they access it. You can inject credentials that you are automatically loading from a secret manager, like Vault, for example. And you can record sessions. So if someone is SSHing into a machine, you can record what they're doing so that you have an audit trail of what exactly they've done to this, right, to this machine. So in a nutshell, it's not a problem that, like one person, it's going to solve one person's problem, right? It's not like Terraform, it's not like Vagrant necessarily, but it's more of an enterprise problem when you have a bunch of teams who have to collaborate on larger systems and have no clue how to access any of these systems and control where they're going to be accessing at any given point in time. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That was such a good summary of it too. Because like, especially that last part, because when you're like, so like a lot of I don't know how many people on the stream know me who are watching it, but prior I was in the opposite path of Rosemary. I was in all of these smaller startups, and the smaller startups, you get used to just sort of spreading keys all over the place, right? And dealing with that whole sprawl in terms of getting into those access points. So it's kind of hard to see. It's like, wait, you want me to go stand up all of this stuff just so I can access a database once like a month? It's like, well, not as much. But when you get to the much larger levels, when it's more than just a few teams, right? When you have to make sure everyone's doing the correct thing and have that sort of bird's eye view over across the entire system and managing all of that access, that's of course when the benefits of it, sort of like an economies of scale idea, sort of comes into play. So
yeah. They call it the boundary, the modern privileged access management system, which is, it's true. Pam. All right, wait. We have to pause for comments because I appreciate some of this. Someone mentioned that 10 parts will take till summer 2025. That's more of us for you.
Don't curse us.
yeah, I know, right? Please don't. I hope it all goes smoothly. And thank you, James. I will take up your offer on teaching me Nomad because it's long overdue. And some folks, so like some folks have also mentioned, right, it's completely new to them, or it's like you haven't worked with it because it doesn't solve your problem because you're one or two people on a team. Like it's not going to solve your problem. That's probably just too much. But if you've got 10,000 developers who are all over doing a bunch of things in their own AWS accounts or whatever, like this starts to become a big issue. I appreciate Dan in the chat who said it was October 2020. I appreciate that. Thank you. That was when Boundary came out. Yeah.
We should know that. But
yeah, we should remember
now
that.
We do.
Now we do. I knew it was 2020. I was like 2020. I think it's 2020. And then jump boxes with SSH configs. Yes. When you said SSH configs, Cole, I thought like that meme, like you get an SSH key. You get an SSH key. Yeah.
Or even worse, it's all the same as you get a copy of it.
Yeah. You shared your SSH keys. All right. So now that we've talked about what is Boundary, that's very important. Let's talk about some use cases. I think I briefly mentioned some of them, but I imagine there could be some more. Cole, what are your thoughts? Use cases? Ideas?
So obviously the most top of mind one is SSH keys, right? How are we gonna get into the box, check out, see what's working? How are we gonna do it safely? That's usually the easy one. But of course, when you go to just that, folks are generally, well, okay, I can use like some cloud provider thing that lets me dive into an instance. The next case, and Rosemary, you're the one who usually like points to this one, and I know in our reInvent thing you'd set this up as well. In a reInvent talk we did earlier, where we show like Boundary in the context of a very, very large architecture, which is accessing a database, even, right? Something that you'll probably
that's my favorite one. Yeah. I like that one. So and it came out of because like when I was working in software development, I wasn't allowed to run just like a managed instance of a database somewhere, right? Like we have ephemeral databases now and it's great, but not every company wants to buy an ephemeral database product or invest in them. And they also don't want to just like give everybody a bunch of managed databases and spend money on it because let's be honest, we're all trying to drive our cloud costs down. And then like local container development, if you really wanted to, I guess you could spin up like a local container with a database in it, but it just didn't necessarily help when you had to mirror or shadow all of the data from one database into your local instance and do testing. So as a dev, what I found myself doing sometimes, like from just learning from other developers, was just like get a username and password and then use it as a way to test against a live database with like read-only access, for example, right? So something that's safe. And I had the process of being able to do that with non-PII, with proprietary information, things like that. But it was still really painful. So the nice part about Boundary is that you can set up what's called a proxy and proxy a connection to a database. And what that means is that if you're running, integration tests locally, you can run it against the database as long as you're authenticated to Boundary first. You're going through that proxy, you're mimicking all those calls. So it's kind of nice from a development flow standpoint because it's almost this way to get local to remote development without necessarily feeling like you are doing exclusively remote development or exclusively local development as a developer too. I would say it works for most databases. Sharded databases are a bit like depends. It kind of depends. But most of the SQL databases and relational databases, it will be able to connect to TCP endpoints. So that is kind of useful. And if you have any like upstream APIs too that you might be trying to test out, they're managed services, they're on a dev endpoint, you require someone, a dev and bound to authenticate to Boundary before they get to those test endpoints. You can also do sort of this nice local to remote development approach with third-party services or any other upstream API, downstream API that your application might depend on as well. So there's some thoughts there on how Boundary is helpful for developers.
Yeah, that's I feel like that's one of the things why when right at the beginning when you're like, what are some use cases? It's like, well, there is the very just straightforward use case of it being a privileged access management tool, but as Rosemary just elaborated on, there are a lot of other different ways that you can use it in context of this entire proxy to databases in terms of using it as development. Obviously, whether or not that's going to work for your team or just given your given development requirements is a different story, but just know that the tool has a lot of different type of use cases, even if they're not necessarily obvious. But once you get through this series and you understand how it works from a fundamental level, you'll be able to think a lot more creatively in how you can go about using it.
Yep. And as a note, I did post our talk, reInvent talk. There we go. Because folks are like, where is this? Yeah. Here it is.
Yeah. If you want to drink from a fire hose, right there.
Oh yeah. I don't recommend this talk at all for that because it is just too much information. It's great. It was just,
yeah, it's very, you've got to be pretty up high level, or no, what's the right word?
You know what it is? If you watched Getting into Console, Getting into Vault, and now you're going to watch this series, you'll follow along with it.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, it's yeah. But anyhow.
Anyway, we had a comment about how would Boundary play a part in managing Nomad, which is a great question. Mm-hmm. If you have Nomad clients, right, that you want to SSH into for debugging, for debugging purposes, for example, you can set up Nomad clients on Boundary workers, and you would be able to manage and schedule, any Boundary related. I guess Boundary related workers and things like that from a Nomad perspective. Or if you have clients that have applications, for example, then you can SSH into them and then do some debugging if you need to. Mm-hmm. So in terms of yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, we'll actually see that in combination with Kubernetes today and sort of a live upward demo of where we're headed.
Yeah.
And maybe if we're feeling really ambitious, we'll show how to use it with kubectl.
I mean, yeah, we can do that.
Wait, don't hold me to that.
Actually, it's a lot easier. I'm going to be honest. It's a lot easier to just use it with like kubectl is because people love the Kubernetes use cases. Because I know that the Nomad folks are like, why are you mentioning this? And I know, honestly, it's just so much easier to do Boundary with Nomad that you don't have to do all this like shenanigans. The Kubernetes use case just happens because people are like, can I use Boundary connect to Kubernetes? And then you end up doing like jot rabbit hole of like jots left and right. So anyway. JSON web tokens left and right. So in terms of how does Boundary manage Nomad from an identity access management standpoint, you can separately deploy Nomad, separately deploy Boundary from Nomad and use identity and access to control access to various node pools for Nomad node pools, different Nomad, Nomad clients, right? If you have different applications. And some of the other things that you might consider is like if you wanted to secure the Nomad endpoint, right, you could also secure the Nomad endpoint by saying like you'll authenticate to Boundary first. Now, Nomad itself, you could also, you could set up authentication SSO in front of that. But if you really wanted to, and you're like, only certain people should connect to Nomad anyway, the Nomad controls anyway, and it's on a private network, maybe you'd use Boundary to just control how someone accesses Nomad. But I would say in terms of like the really nice use case, which is what myself and Rob Barnes are doing right now for HashiCorp. Hint, hint, it's a preview of things to come. But we are actually using Boundary so that we can SSH into Nomad clients and debug what's happening with some of the things we're running on them. So yeah,
nice.
That's that.
Well, where are we now?
Oh, we are. Okay. So we talked a lot. Can we show some code now? Like I'm just like, sure. I feel like we talked. We spent
talking. In terms of demo, I guess let's go ahead and let me show sort of.
Yeah. While Cole's getting ready. I'm excited that folks will be at HashiCorp in Boston.
Yes.
Come say hello to us. We will both be there, right? Cool. I think we'll both
yes,
be there.
we will.
Yes, we will both be there. So come say hello to us. Cole's getting ready.
Yeah, I'm sharing my
I know. Yeah, and also as a side note, for those who have not joined this and are like, why are you doing a demo? Usually you're just like diving into code. We usually previously on other getting into series, we would pretty much just dive right into it. And the feedback we got was we don't actually understand like what it's supposed to look like. Which was fair feedback. Like no one knew. It was like with console, people were like, what is it supposed to look like? You started doing stuff on terminal, and terminal is just not that cool to look at. Some will beg to differ.
Speaking of terminal, can you see my terminal?
I can see your browser.
You can see my browser.
I can see fake service.
Come on, terminal. Okay, give me a second.
What has happened? Okay. Well, Cole's figuring that out. So we are showing you what the end state looks like, and we are using HTTP boundary, right, Cole?
Yes, we are for this particular one.
For this demo. And previously, we would introduce HashiCorp Cloud Platform, the managed service. We would introduce it later in the streams, but after we set the foundations. But again, folks were like, we have no idea what good is supposed to look like. We just don't know what it's supposed to be. Yes. So we are moving this up a bit. We're showing HCP a little earlier, not that you're going to get that much of an introduction into HCP boundary, but we're just showing it as a way so you get a sense of like what this actually is supposed to look like.
Yeah. So this is super, super simple. Let's just talk about architecture real quick. Just we've got a pretty sizable EKS deployment in AWS. Nothing like that deviates from the crazy, but something standard you would probably do in terms of course, having your network segmented into subnets, having the nodes behind in one of those private subnets, a load balancer to allow public north-south traffic. We've got some services launched in there. This particular one actually has both Vault and console and boundary and all done in Terraform. So there's a good amount of stuff here into it. But of course, what we need to figure out here is for the different, in this particular example we're going to show, is accessing the actual EKS nodes themselves. So let me do something here, and to make sure that I have one more time here. So Rosemary, do we just want to go right into the connect side of it? Why don't we do that?
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah, let's do that. Let me just go ahead and show the actual AWS console here so you can see some of the nodes themselves. Yeah. Oh, we don't want to show that. We want to show.
Everybody knows.
Here.
Yeah.
Are we going to let me? Oh my gosh.
No, okay. Well, you take that down for a second and fix that. What is happening with your screens lately? It's like, yeah. Anyway.
Okay, here we go. I got it.
Okay.
So we have some instances up here. These top three are going to be the EKS nodes themselves, right? So these are the data plane. These are hosting the actual containers. And then we have the actual boundary workers. And of course, we'll dive into what those are. But what this looks like is normally you would, of course, go about having to like grab an SSH key and dive into these particular instances. But what we can do here instead is just do a boundary connect. And then I just happen to know the particular target.
Can you authenticate first? I know that we're just.
Oh, I am authenticated. Do you want me to do that process?
You should probably. Let's explain that first.
Oh, do you want?
Step one, end user.
Right. Well, let's do it. Let me go through the whole thing just real quick, just so you can see that there's no SSH key here at all, right?
Yeah, no,
so when I go into this,
magic,
I am in one of these particular EKS nodes.
Can you do a Docker PS? Or sudo Docker PS, because you have to sudo.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Sudo Docker PS. Just to show.
Oh, wait, that's right, because EKS isn't using Docker; it's using Container D.
Oh, whatever,
right?
Container D.
Yeah, and I actually don't know what the command to list those containers are.
kubectl version. I mean, there's got to be kubectl.
Wait, do I have? Yeah, you would think so, right?
Yeah. No. Okay. No, that's fine. All right.
Right. Yeah. So I guess we could go ahead and install that. However, this is indeed the EKS node. I know this for a fact because we can see the IP address right here. Right? And if we head back over, any given one of these is the actual node itself. It's not that one. Here it is. Is that it? Nope.
45.
Yes, here it is.
There we go.
That's this particular one right here. So now, interestingly, and what we're going to walk through here in just a second is, of course, if I head back out and I do this again, I'm probably going to get a different one. Yep. So now I'm in 184.252, which we know is one of those other nodes, which of course is going to probably already bring up some questions as to why that's the case, right? But okay, so let's hop back here. The main point of that is that we are able to access any of these EKS nodes, right? Through just this one command. You don't see me loading up any SSH keys. I'm not using one to do that. Those are all actually being managed by Boundary themselves. So Rosemary, where do we want to go from here?
Can you actually show the Boundary UI?
Yep.
I do want to show that.
To the Boundary UI.
So you'll notice, like, if you're a developer and you're a system administrator and you're like, I'm just going to connect to these sets of nodes, I'm going to do Boundary Connect, and there's a target ID with the target ID. And so the important thing is that, Cole has already set up this domain model and all these scopes of like, here's an organization, here are projects in my organization. And this project, if you're a certain user, you have access to this, you have access to this. And so in this case, it is using, it's setting up target, if you can go to targets. Targets, you can set up a group of EKS nodes, right? And this group of EKS nodes points to we're using a dynamic host catalog. And the dynamic host catalog, right, is going to just, search for a set of hosts, right, with this tag. I don't know if you're searching by tag, right?
Yes, by tag, Boundary host. Yep.
Yeah, so he's searching by tag, and that automatically onboards these hosts into the catalog, which means you can set a target, an SSH target for it. So if you are an administrator for Boundary and you want to set this up for someone, basically you say, here's a user, they have access to this project or this scope, whatever scope it might be, this set of projects, and they can access this group of targets. And in this group of targets, you can define what kind of session it is. It could be SSH, it could be TCP. You can also define like how long you're going to give them the session, how many sessions they can have open at any given time. And then you can set up an automatic credentials injection, which is what the SSH key is. What's doing with the SSH key. So
see those right here.
Yeah, it's injecting the username and key pair. So that way, anybody who's using it does not have to download and share key pairs with each other.
Yep. That is very, very nice, right? Like that takes that entire management of passing keys around entirely out of our hands now. And instead, we just have these right here. You can, of course, add these. We've done all of this in Terraform, of course, so we're not even having to like deal with like manually putting anything in. But yeah, this just sets it up. So like we saw from the CLI, there, of course, Rosemary mentioned showing it at the beginning. However, she is overestimating my ability to already have the password not in a place where we would see it.
That's why.
And I don't trust my screen sharing stuff, given I've already shown our billing. So
okay. Yeah. Okay, that's fair.
But do know your user, that if you are an end user, right, trying to SSH, you would, of course, have a user within Boundary that you would then have to log in through or do like an OIDC workflow to get credentials to authenticate through. And then you would be able to do the Boundary Connect into one of these targets, assuming you, of course, have the authorization to do so.
Yeah, exactly. Lauren had a great question. So when you connect using the target name, you land on a random host of that set. That's very interesting. Yes, you can also connect by the host ID. So Cole, if you can go back to Boundary Connect, I guess maybe that's, or host sources is fine too. You can go here.
There we go.
You can connect by host ID. So you can connect by target and then by host ID. So if you wanted to be really prescriptive about which host you wanted to connect to, you can be even more fine-grained with the ID, which identifier you're going to be connecting to.
Do we want to do that?
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay, so I'll grab this one. And by the way, well, actually, we'll come back to this because this confused the heck out of Fan, and I. So we'll.
And I think Van's in the chat. I don't know. Not to call him out, but I think Van's in the chat.
So I actually don't know how to do this command. So what is this?
Well, we're going to do the CLI because chaos. We're just, so Boundary Connect, just go back to your Boundary Connect command. And then if you could do -- help at the end of it, let's just.
Okay, here we go.
Good old CLI.
Yeah.
No. I think SSH, you have to do Boundary.
Oh, okay.
SSH help. SSH help. Target scope ID. Scroll up. Host ID. There you go. Yeah. So --host ID.
Oh, nice. So I can just do that instead of target ID.
Yeah.
Host ID equals this.
Yep. You need the target ID too.
Oh, so I also need the target ID.
Yeah, you also need the target. I thought you needed the target ID.
Host ID.
By the way, folks, there is a transparent.
Hey, look at that.
Yeah, there are transparent sessions. So Ethereum private beta, Reno? Yeah, beta. Private beta. Yeah. So
maybe Van will know, but yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, just keep that in mind. This is not, you don't always have to use IDs. You can use other things too, but you can use aliases as well to connect. Yeah, so you have a lot of options there. But if you wanted to be really prescriptive about which host you wanted to connect to, you can do this. Yes.
Yep, which we just did. So let's confirm that. This went into 105.24. Let's confirm that as this one. Okay, so this is going to be very confusing here, but here's the 105.24. So this is that. Just to explain why this looks kind of messy. This is an EKS thing for anyone who's using this with Kubernetes. If you're using EKS, then you probably know the VPC CNI plugin gives every single one of the containers its own unique VPC IP address, and they just attach those onto the EC2 instances. So any of these EKS nodes, they have all these IPs representing the different services, but the node itself, this is its actual address. So this is the one that we're going into. So any I don't know if you had a comment on that, Rosemary.
Yeah. I mean, I would say we should probably we're gonna talk about dynamic host catalog a little bit more probably in the future. But there's one for AWS and there's one for Azure right now. So and they'll just read every interface, every IP address of every interface.
This does answer that question that I believe that Blurn asked. This is how you would, of course, pick a very specific host. And in this case, we picked this host with this, whatever that ID is, and we were able to go directly into it as opposed to getting a random one.
Yeah. And we did have a question on is there any plan to simplify the CLI so you don't have to do the IDs and things like that? Thank you for the Boundary team in chat. Big claps. Thank you for joining us. There's a feature in private beta called transparent sessions. So that way you get these, you can specify an alias and you can also standardize on sort of this DNS host name if you wanted to, and just do this SSH to the DNS host name. So
actually, I think I have an alias set up here.
Do you now? Oh, do we want to be chaotic and try it?
Yes, for target. Okay. So how do I use this?
Well,
actually, Van set that up for me, so I don't even know if he did that.
Why didn't we have Van on the stream? I don't know why we didn't have Van on the stream today.
I was like, hey, will you look at this? And he went in and he just set that up. I'm like,
alias is GA today.
Oh, perfect. So if we show
celebrate.
That even works
celebrate.
better.
Okay, so well, this is why we have documentation, because I forgot. I did this and then I forgot. I forgot. I'm sorry, everybody. This is where it's there is a boundary alias, I think. So yeah, you could do boundary.
Does Van know off the top of his head?
Do you have the latest version of boundary?
Oh, very good question.
Because you have the alias associated with it, but in order for you to use the alias, you need to.
Oh, wait. How is this? It's boundary. It's boundary just version, right?
Well, I remember you are not updated.
I remember Van used it though, but maybe it's I don't have mine updated.
I don't think yours is updated.
Yeah.
Yours is not updated.
I could risk trying to update it.
Yeah, you could do. Yeah, did you use Brew to update it?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
We have time.
What is it? Brew upgrade or Brew?
Yeah, Brew. Upgrade.
Yeah.
And then boundary.
All right. This might.
Because if it's everything. GA today, although I don't know, I think his transparent sessions.
Okay.
I don't think it's in there. It might not be in there.
But we should be able to do the alias, right?
Yeah, you should be able to see the aliases.
Okay, so let's try the aliases. So I should be able to. It would be I guess if we look at help again, right?
Yeah, it should be boundary. It should be boundary connect SSH -EC2. I think that's what your alias is, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
What's the name of the option here?
It might not be in this. You should just be able to do boundary connect SSH -EC2.
Really? Okay.
Yes.
All right. Boundary connect SSH -EC2. Well, look at that.
There we go. Yeah.
Oh,
So
my goodness.
much easier. So if you do set up an alias, you can set up
Yeah.
an alias. Aliases are GA, thanks to the folks in chat.
Yeah. That is way better than searching for the target ID.
Yeah. So you can do Boundary Connect. So for folks who were like, hey, can I just use host name? You could define a set of host names or a set of aliases for a set of hosts. And then you can connect SSH through that. So just make sure you upgrade Boundary first to 0.17. Because you won't be able to do transparent sessions yet because I think it's in private beta. So Cole, you might need a different installer, but I think at least for now you can show that the aliases exist.
Yep.
And according to Van, you can also use the admin UI to create the alias, which is correct. Very nice. Okay. All right, we are continuing on questions in chat because we have some time. Can you demo how to update database schema while you're doing a boundary upgrade? Is this the boundary database schema as well as boundary? Just let me know if you could clarify.
Yeah, so a database schema or
is it boundaries database or boundaries database? Let us know what you're interested in. We can probably try it in one of the streams. We're probably not going to get to it until much later, but we're probably we're going to give it a try. And then does Alias work with RGP and I think PG Postgres? RGP? Yeah, Postgres. I think the aliases do work. I imagine for SSH. Yeah.
I would assume there's just a way to just hit a target IDs, right? So
right. Yeah. So you should be able to do it for Postgres and RDP. And yes, we got clarification on the proofs. Okay, good question. Yes, boundaries database. Okay. Alias works with any target. Yes, that is. Thank you for confirming. And then boundaries database. So we'll add that into. Let me add that into our notes for another stream. That we maybe will do a chaotic boundary upgrade with a chaotic boundary schema upgrade. If you have specific, by the way, for the folks in chat who asked that, if you have something specific in mind or you ran into challenges while you were doing this, please just message us on LinkedIn or something, and let us know what challenges you ran into, because it seems like
message her, don't message me.
What?
I'm kidding.
Why? You know stuff about boundary.
Oh no, it's not even that. I'll just send you emojis and random jokes. It's just
cool. Cool. Okay. So what else we got?
I was gonna say we should show them the session stuff. Since we can do that where I like log in.
Session.
Just where we like cut people off.
Oh yeah. Okay, right. So the other thing to note is that it's not just for the end user to connect to endpoints and for you to organize how they're going to connect to endpoints. You can, from a security standpoint, you can also audit what sessions are open, who's connected to that endpoint, how long they've been connected to it. If you have session recording enabled, which Cole, I don't know if your environment has session recording enabled.
I don't think it does.
Okay, so Cole does not have session recording enabled, but if you do have session recording enabled, you can track what folks are doing on the machine. Like you'll be able to play back Cole's doing echo LOL. Yeah. It's session recording. I know it's not necessarily it's great. It's an enterprise thing. I guess it's an enterprise requirement for a lot of reasons. But I like using session recording because it means that I can manually reconcile them back into my automation. Hold on. Let me just. I'll find. Where is this? Yeah, I'll find the video for this. But if you are interested in boundary and Terraform recording, I'll drop a link in the chat.
While she does that, we can see here in the sessions thing, even though we don't have sessions recording turned on, we can see that there is someone inside of one of the EKS node target right now. We can see that the status is active, which is, this is very simple viewpoint. And obviously the session recording is something more advanced. But even without that, that's still really useful to know who it is that's accessing stuff. And me being me, I'm in full admin mode right now as I access that.
Cole,
you can have different
shame.
Yeah. But
and if you could cancel
Yep. So let's see. It's active right now, and someone's in here being a troll. So if let's cancel it. Canceling. And I just got closed. Look at that.
Yay.
No
So
more shenanigans.
effectively, like the other use case for this that we didn't talk about, but I've been hearing a lot about, is just-in-time access for break glass. So imagine something goes horribly wrong in your production environment, and you need to grant temporary SSH access. You have an alert that goes off. It alerts your on-call engineer. Can you allow temporary access and boundary for a target group, right? And then give that on-call engineer just-in-time access for the duration of the incident. And then after the incident is closed, then you can terminate the sessions that they do have, and then remove that user from that group. So yes, the possibility is there with Boundary. You have to build that automation yourself right now, but you can do it. But it's another use case that a lot of folks have brought up, which is just like ephemeral just-in-time access for break glass or for emergency changes that need to go into a production system.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So Rosemary, I know we're doing good. I feel like we're gonna hit our time thing here. We really should talk about the architecture, right? The recommended architecture.
Yeah, we should talk about what is going on with Boundary. Like we show this is what you're going to do with it, but underneath it all, what we have to build out.
Yeah.
Which means Cole and I will have to do a lot of Cole mostly. Although myself too. Cole, I'm gonna copy paste and send it to Cole because I have some of it built out. So
yes, exactly.
So we're gonna have to build out.
For the architecture thing, do we have any diagrams that we can show?
Yeah, let me pull it up. And
I
then
will move my screen here.
You pull it. I pull it up. You answer questions in chat.
Yes. So are some features only available through a paid license? Yes. Yes, that is for sure. So I think we have Van in the chat and some other Boundary folks if they want to elaborate on the differences between Boundary, HTTP Boundary, and Boundary Enterprise. Of course, those options are all going to come with their own differences and benefits.
I'll do the TLDR, but if you're looking at the short discussion of what is available. If you are interested in session recording, which is an enterprise requirement for a lot of folks, session recording is Boundary Enterprise and HCP Boundary. It will depend on also your tier of HCP Boundary as well. But so it's on the SaaS version of Boundary as well as Boundary Enterprise. Some of the other ones are like multi-hop workers. So we'll talk about workers as a configuration. It's a bit. It's a bit of a challenge, but like workers as well, right? Like how you configure your workers jumping in through different private networks and things like that. Different architectures can be supported across Boundary Enterprise and HTTP Boundary. And that I think that's the biggest one. So session recording is probably the biggest one that folks would be interested in.
Yep.
Everything else, I think, if you don't have a session recording requirement, you might decide like, I don't need an HTTP Boundary or Boundary Enterprise. But if you're an enterprise, you probably do have a session recording requirement.
So since we've got like 17 minutes here, let's do the architecture thing, and then we can come back with any other time left and answer any other questions.
And my mouse died, of course.
You noob.
Cole, I think you're gonna have to share this one because I think my mouse just died.
No.
Live stream.
No. Okay, sure.
You have to unshare me and then pull this.
Oh, this is really funny. Okay, yeah. Can you?
This is the first time my mouse has died on a stream.
Yeah. Let me find this. So. Hold up. Oh, sweet. I already have the thing. Perfect. 1 second. Let me. Oh, what? Come on. We can do this.
This is, I think it's funny. The joke on these streams is like we show the exact wrong way to do everything.
Oh,
and
yeah.
This is true.
Okay, here we go.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Cole. All right. Chaotic today. Chaotic stream today. Okay. So our architecture. Boundary has a couple components to it. So we're going to just start with the controllers. Basically, Boundary has a control plane. Control plane is a loose term because control plane can mean a million different things. But effectively, there's the logic for how Boundary is going to administer to scopes, administer to targets, and things like that. So there are a set of controllers that hold all this information about user groups. It'll hold all the information about the targets, hosts, and everything else. So the controllers, you should have 3 across multiple availability zones. Availability is important for the controllers. So do keep that in mind. And they are going to require some kind of KMS behind it. That way it encrypts that information, as well as there's a PostgreSQL database. You'll notice this is a little unusual for HashiCorp tools, right? Like, because Vault itself has like unlimited number of backends. Console has unlimited number of backends. Boundary itself is helpfully opinionated. It's that way, you have the ability to upgrade, you have the ability to control data, what kind of upgrades you do have, what information gets written to that database, right? And so it is very helpful in that regard. Not session recordings, for example, don't get stored in the database, right? Session recordings go in an S3 bucket somewhere. But at least the database will hold most of the information about what you configure for the scopes and for the projects and for users and things like that. And then if you're fronted by an application load balancer. So when a user wants to authenticate to Boundary, they're going to connect to the controllers, right? They're going to connect through the application load balancer to the controllers first, and then they'll get back a Boundary token. If you're familiar with Vault, this is very similar to a Vault authentication method, where you're going to connect to Vault using the authentication method, and you'll get back a token. So it's very similar in Boundary. Okay. Let's scroll down.
Do a target workflow. There we go.
Yeah. Okay. So in terms of connecting to a target workflow, right? So the first thing that you're going to do as a user who wants to connect to a target, you're going to authenticate to Boundary controller, get back a token, and that token is stored in your local keyring or wherever it is, environment, etc.
Which was the first diagram.
Yep. What Cole showed was the second step, which is then you're going to connect to a target. In order for you to connect to a target, you, the user, do not connect to the target directly. What you do is you go through a worker, what is called a Boundary worker. The Boundary worker is going to proxy that request and connection through to your target. This means that you can deploy workers in any network topology so long as it has connectivity into the target host or endpoint that you want to reach. So users have to have access to the Boundary control plane controllers, and they must have access to the worker that they want to connect to. So if you are not over a VPN, if you decide not to deploy a VPN and you do connect over public internet, your user will have access to a worker on the public internet, right? If you do use a VPN, then as long as they connect through a worker and that worker has routing through a VPN, then, same thing. But effectively, the user has to have access to what is called an ingress worker. The ingress worker connects to an egress worker, and then the egress worker connects to the other hosts. Cole's laughing.
Yeah, we've got a whole stream in that part. So
yeah, we have to have a whole stream, one whole stream on workers.
Yes.
Yeah. Which, to be honest, it probably isn't too far fetched because I remember in my first sysadmin job, I had to jump through three bastions in order, what I guess called jump boxes because it wasn't a public cloud, but like 3 jump boxes in order to get to a target host to debug.
Yeah, nothing
sad.
like SSH key forwarding all the things, right? So
yeah, it was a lot of SSH key forwarding. So it was a bit sad. As a side effect of this, keep in mind you do have to do SSH key forwarding. Boundary will do SSH key forwarding for you, but keep in mind the SSH key. The worker must have the same SSH key as the hosts, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So all of these things have to at least have SSH keys allowed to access these hosts.
Yep. And in the example that we saw earlier, like it was just an EC2 key pair that was being used by Boundary, of course, to connect through to EKS nodes. But of course, I didn't have that on my local machine, so didn't have to worry about it.
Yeah. So just keep that in mind. You do have to have the either you have to have it injected or you have to have the workers the ability to connect through the same SSH key and forward it. So. And
again, we've got some questions, but we will answer them here as soon as we get through this the architecture.
Yes. So that's how you connect to a target workflow. So if we scroll down, there are a number of target architectures that you could decide. For the most part, folks will run the controllers on virtual machines. Or they'll use HTTP boundary. I mean, I guess I've heard some folks try Kubernetes. I'll defer to if anybody else in the community has tried this. But the controllers themselves usually tend to run on a virtual machine. And then, if you're on a cloud service provider, a managed database for the database, and the cloud service provider's KMS. The workers are kind of mixed, right? So some folks will do workers on a target runtime of choice. Could be Kubernetes. Other folks will run them in virtual machines. So the workers themselves could be, as long as they have routing available to the target endpoint, right? They could be on the same runtime as your target endpoint, or they could be on different, as long as there's routing.
Nice. So up here, you've got the control plane. It's how you auth as the user, right? After you've authed, you connect the workers that then forward you out to your ultimate targets, or in this case, the hosts, right?
Yes.
Cool. So what about fault tolerance and high availability, since we're talking about architecture?
Let's dive into it, since we're here anyway. And I don't have mouse control.
Wait,
you're driving it.
There's no diagram. So we're going to use these as slides for you to just talk on them. How about that? You sort of cherry pick here what you think is important to talk about.
I mean, node failures, I think it's more like in general, like a distributed systems concern. Like, just keep in mind that try to distribute your controllers across multiple availability zones. Multi-region is a little bit trickier. Regional, like, we don't really have like an official way to support, I guess, regional. Like, there's nothing built into Boundary that necessarily supports like regional deployments, right? But I would say, like, keep in mind that you deploy secondary nodes, right, in a database in a different region. If you do want to do like a multi-region setup, you can deploy controllers in a different region and then front it with a global load balancer kind of thing. But you would have to unfortunately, you would have to do a cross-region load balancing in order for it to fully work. But just keep in mind that you will have replicas of PostgreSQL, right, in different regions. And not all managed databases have the ability for you to do write replicas, right, in every region either, right? So you may run into some trouble with that.
And of course, that's gonna be all of a sudden there's gonna be some differences based on which cloud provider or what solution you're using for all the hosting. So just be aware.
Yeah, exactly. So I think there's just a general thought process of, like, if you do want to do this and you want to do cross-region, just make sure that you have your database. The database is the most important piece from the like cross-region failover concern. So that's probably the biggest thing that you would have to be aware of, and make sure that you do your due diligence in making sure that you have all the correct configuration set up, and it's not all necessarily read replicas. You may have to configure some write replicas as well, depending if you're allowing people if you're trying to run active across multiple regions and you're allowing people to connect through workers, make sure your workers are also labeled properly so that you don't just like route people cross region because a worker doesn't have access to, like, a worker in US East 2 doesn't have access to like West 1 or whatever it is, right? You have to make sure that you do a lot of tagging and metadata organization to make sure that you're also routing the workers properly as well.
Yep. All right. High availability should be pretty simple. Oh, we have architecture thingy. Nice.
Yeah, we do have an architecture. Ports, I guess, we talked about what connectivity is sort of vaguely necessary, but in terms of connectivity, in terms of ports, if you could zoom in on the diagram, I feel like I'm squinting. Okay, that's perfect. Yeah. Yeah, that's perfect. Okay. So two big ones. 9200 is inbound to the controllers. So that is what a user will typically need in order to access Boundary itself. Of course, controllers need access to the Postgres database on 5432. And then the workers communicate to the worker on 9201. So you do have to have 9201 from worker to controller. And then workers between themselves need connectivity on 9202. And then you have to make sure the workers, depending on their target, have access to whatever port the target is available. And then you also have to make sure, very important, that the user has access to the worker that is planning that they have to connect to for a target on 9202. So effectively, workers have to have 9201 and 9202 open on TCP. Controllers should have 9201, 9200, and 5432. Yay.
Yay. So that in being context of high availability, what is this diagram telling us about high availability here that we haven't already talked about?
I don't think it has much. I don't think it, to be honest,
Yeah.
I don't think it tells us much more.
Yeah.
Other than just like what are the ports that you'll need to have open. I don't think there's anything specific.
Yeah, this would have been helpful to have open when we were going through the other stuff. So
I'm glad we actually have a diagram for ports this time, so that we can actually implement the security groups without checking them 3 times and trying to figure out what's going on.
I mean, that'll happen anyways. So
yeah. I know.
It's inevitable.
I know.
Okay.
So I mean, I think that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
There are of course like best practices. We will try to adhere to as many of them as possible within reason, like securing on HTTPS.
I think the only other plug here is that while we are going to show so we're going to like build this out from scratch unless Rosemary has changed the agenda without me knowing.
No, we're going to build it from scratch.
Yeah, which means we're going to be building out the entire control plane. We're setting up all the workers. We're going to be going through every single one of the commands to get that finished. We're going to be writing the initial boot scripts to get that all completed. So the sort of idea here is that we will sort of scaffold as much out as we can, a blank slate with Terraform. So you will see how to do all of this in context of Terraform, but during the actual streams, we will do it manually. And after stream is finished, we'll of course bake that into the Terraform project that you'll all have access to, so that if you do miss a chapter or if you just want to catch up to speed, you'll be able to just run, ideally, a Terraform apply and be caught up with us. But of course, we're not going to give you like the AWS account and stuff. You're going to have to go get that yourself.
Yeah.
Well, I said that should be obvious, but
no, I mean, and we're also not going to do an intro to Terraform. We do have to preface with that. We're also not going to be doing an intro to Terraform. But in terms of like a couple other things, like where we're going to end up, ideally at the end of the series, what you'll find is like you'll have at least the knowledge of how to set up a controller from scratch, how to set up a worker from scratch, how you configure and add hosts and targets using static and dynamic host catalog. We're going to set up an alias. We're going to do some identity access management. We're going to try to set up an OIDC auth method in front of boundary. TBD. We're going to figure that out if we can do that. We're going to talk about database targets as well as using doing credentials injection with Vault. And then we'll show briefly HTTP boundary. We're going to talk about multi-hop sessions. We're going to do session recording. We're going to do troubleshooting and auditing, right? Yep. So all of the above, we're going to try to get through.
That end result then should be, we've got a nice Kubernetes deployment that's got a bunch of services on it. And we have, they've got a database that some of the applications are using, and we can manage entire access to people diving into those resources.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's the dream. That
is the dream. Okay. We have a lot going on in chat. I see a whole dialogue, so I appreciate the dialogue going on.
Let's start with the YouTube one, because it looks like the LinkedIn ones did get answered. So we can, of course, loop back around to those. But let's start with this one here. And of course, I think some of the answers are in here we can sort of use, but yeah.
Front workers with an internal load balancer, or should they scale out independently, each with its own IP? I guess that would kind of depend, right? I would say it does kind of make sense to front it with a load balancer in Kubernetes. Especially if you're deploying the workers in Kubernetes, especially if you're deploying the workers in Kubernetes and you expect them to scale up and scale down. The one thing I would be concerned about is whether or not like you could, like you would register the internal load balancer in. No, actually you couldn't do that. Yeah, I don't think you could, because you have to do a controller token, right, to a worker. So it's 1-to-1. So I don't think you can do a load balancer.
Yeah. I don't know why you would would though,
Well,
right?
I could see you would, because like if you connect through Kubernetes and you're just like, okay, globally, like these are my pool of workers, right? I'm just connected to this load balance group, which makes sense. I mean, it makes sense, but I don't think Boundary would necessarily support that because workers themselves have to register with the controller. So an internal load balancer wouldn't have a group of them registering by the same controller token, right?
Yeah.
They would have to have a unique controller token. So they have to scale out independently, I think.
Yeah. Which we'll show all of that as we go through.
Yeah.
And then you actually already mentioned this, but just so that you can, just to drive it home, we will show how to, we will TBD show it, right?
Yeah. We will TBD show. Can the user be public OIDC provided at GitHub, Google? Yes. So you can do that. There is a boundary. There is a here we go. I was like looking for it. Here is a set of tutorials on it. So can
you even click the box to do it?
Yeah.
Look at that. You did it. Nice.
I did it. Okay.
Yeah.
There we go. All right. I got 20% on this. So we're running at 20% on this.
Yeah.
So you can check that out if you want to get an early start on it. We are going to try to set this up.
Yeah. Nice. And looks like we're up here at the top of the hour. So I guess the most important question here at the ending is, how do you subscribe to get notified for the next session?
Well, if you're on YouTube, then you can click the subscribe button. The live streams will be posted. The live streams will be posted. Probably the next one will be posted next week.
Can you show that calendar that you had again?
Yeah, of course. You won't see our faces, but that's all right. So check on YouTube if you're interested in checking us out on LinkedIn. Then you'll see the post come up on the HashiCorp page. So just keep subscribed to the HashiCorp page. Unfortunately, we used to do like a bunch of like calendar invites and things like that, and that didn't work out, unfortunately. So it just didn't scale well. So we ended up going with this approach. All right. Is there any lingering comments? I appreciate the Boundary team for like answering the questions as we go along.
That was
Thank you so much.
Helpful.
Yeah,
very helpful.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's it. I guess what are we looking? What's the next time? Give us a quick nutshell next time.
Oh, controllers. So we are actually going to deploy the heart of Boundary. I guess I don't know. I
like that.
Whatever. We're gonna call it that way. We're actually gonna go through the recommended architecture diagrams we did show today, and we are going to be deploying the database, ALB, KMS, EC2 instances, do some connectivity with the VPC. We are going to be doing it all in AWS. We're going to write the boot scripts and configure each controller individually. So you will see us SSHing into the box and messing around with scripts and user data. So be prepared. I'm sorry, everybody. You're going to watch us painstakingly type commands. But nevertheless, if you have requests, if you have more questions, if you run into issues, drop us a comment on LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter, any of the above social media. We want to hear from you. Thank you so much for joining us. Cole, any closing thoughts?
I'm trying to see if Sonoma will let me do the thing where
I don't think so. I don't think it works on StreamYard.
Doesn't work on StreamYard. Nope.
No.
Looking forward to it. I will make sure that I have this shirt washed every 2 weeks so that I can.
What?
Because it's my one Boundary shirt here. So yeah.
I don't even have the branded shirts. I don't even
know.
Yeah,
you not have this one. Okay.
I don't know. I don't know. I just like I don't know. I don't know why I don't have it. Anyway, for those who want to tune in next, we will have you. We will hopefully have you join us on the August 29th stream, same time, and we're going to be talking about controllers. So thank you all, and we hope that you will join us in our lovely live coding.
Or else.
Okay. Bye, everyone.